In the grim darkness of the far future, there exist horrors beyond mortal comprehension. Amongst the countless abominations that plague the galaxy, few inspire such visceral dread as the noise marines of the Emperor's children. These twisted servants of Slaanesh have become something more and less than human, their entire existence reshaped around a single, overwhelming obsession. They are warriors who wage war through cacophony, who find ecstasy in the screams of the dying, and who have surgically and spiritually rebuilt themselves to experience sound as the ultimate sensation. But what happens when the music stops? What fate awaits a noise marine when the one thing that defines their existence is suddenly, irrevocably, taken away? To understand this particular brand of hell, we must first comprehend what a noise marine truly is. These are not merely Chaos Space Marines who happen to use sonic weapons. They are fundamentally altered beings whose entire nervous system, whose very consciousness, has been rewired to process auditory input as the most intense form of pleasure imaginable. Every frequency, every decibel, every subtle modulation of pitch registers in their corrupted brains as waves of euphoria that would shatter a normal human mind. The roar of battle, the shriek of dying enemies, the thunder of their own weapons. These sounds don't just please them. These sounds sustain them. They are the addiction, the drug, the very breath of life to a noise marine. Their transformation into these creatures of sound begins long before they ever pick up a sonic blaster. Through arcane surgery, performed by apothecaries who have long since abandoned any pretense of healing, their auditory systems are augmented beyond natural limits. Xenos organs of unknown origin are grafted into their skulls. Empiric resonators are woven into their nervous tissue. Demonic essences are bound to their cochlear structures. The result is hearing that extends far beyond the range of human perception, capable of distinguishing individual frequencies in the midst of the most chaotic din, able to hear sounds that exist partially in the warp itself. But this gift comes with a terrible price, a price that only becomes truly apparent when that gift is taken away. The psychological architecture of a noise marine is built entirely upon this foundation of sonic sensation. They are addicts in the purest, most absolute sense, but their addiction transcends anything as simple as chemical dependency. Their brains have been fundamentally rewired. Neural pathways that once processed normal sensation have been rerouted, reshaped, and corrupted until sound, and only sound, can trigger their pleasure centers. Everything else fades to insignificance. The taste of food, the touch of a blade cutting into flesh, the sight of carnage, these things register as mere background noise, pale shadows compared to the overwhelming, all-consuming pleasure of auditory stimulation. And the louder, the more discordant, the more extreme the sound, the greater the pleasure. It's an escalating cycle of need and satisfaction that knows no upper limit. A noise marine who once found euphoria in the simple crash of weapons now requires the deafening roar of artillery. One who thrilled to artillery fire soon needs the sound of an entire city being torn apart by sonic weaponry. The threshold constantly rises, the need forever increasing, demanding more volume, more complexity, more sensation. They chase an impossible goal, the perfect sound, the ultimate crescendo that will satisfy them completely and forever. But such satisfaction never comes. Instead, they spiral deeper into addiction, their dependence growing with each battle, each moment, each breath. Now imagine that dependency being suddenly severed. Imagine the drug being taken away, not gradually but instantly, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. For a noise marine, this is not merely unpleasant. It is not simply difficult or painful. It represents the complete and total collapse of everything they are, everything they have become, everything they live for. The silence that follows the loss of hearing for a noise marine is not the peaceful quiet that a normal person might appreciate. It is a screaming void, an absence so profound it becomes its own form of torture. It is the end of existence while consciousness cruelly continues. Throughout this exploration, we will journey deep into this nightmare. We will examine the mechanisms of their addiction, the catastrophic moment when hearing is lost, the immediate horror that follows, and the long, agonizing degradation that awaits those who cannot restore their precious gift. We will look at the desperate measures these warriors take to reclaim what was stolen, the price they pay for potential restoration, and the ultimate fate of those who must learn to exist in permanent silence. We will see how Slaanesh, the dark prince they serve, views this affliction, whether with cruel amusement, indifference, or something approaching pity. And we will understand why, for a noise marine, deafness is a fate potentially worse than death itself. The stories we tell today are drawn from fragments of lore, from whispered accounts of battles against the Emperor's children, from the twisted experiments of Fabius Bile, and from the few survivors who have witnessed what becomes of a noise marine when the music stops. These are not tales of glory or heroism. They are chronicles of addiction, loss, and the special kind of horror that comes from having your entire reason for existence torn away while your body stubbornly refuses to die. They are reminders that in the grim darkness of the far future, there are fates far worse than death, and the servants of chaos often inflict these fates upon themselves in their quest for ever greater sensation. So let us begin this descent into one of the most cruel and unusual torments that the galaxy can offer. Let us understand what it truly means when a warrior who lives for sound is condemned to silence. The gift that defines them. To fully comprehend the horror of a noise marine losing their hearing, we must first understand the extraordinary nature of their auditory capabilities and the fundamental role sound plays in their existence. A noise marine's hearing is not merely enhanced, it is transfigured into something entirely alien, something that exists as much in the warp as in material reality. Through a combination of surgical augmentation, biochemical alteration, sorcerous manipulation, and the dark blessings of Slaanesh, their auditory system becomes a gateway to experiences that would instantly destroy an unaltered mind. The transformation typically begins with physical modifications. Skilled apothecaries, though that term seems almost obscene when applied to the mad scientists who perform these procedures, surgically implant additional organs into the noise marine's skull and nervous system. These organs are not of human origin. Some are harvested from xenos species, whose biology naturally includes more sophisticated auditory processing. The Leia, those serpentine creatures, whose corruption of the Emperor's children began the Legion's fall to Slaanesh, possessed sensory organs that could process sound across a spectrum far broader than human hearing. Fragments of these organs, preserved through dark science and infused with warp energy, are commonly grafted into prospective noise marines. Other augmentations come from even more disturbing sources. Demonic entities, when properly bound and imprisoned, can be forced to lend their essence to mortal flesh. Tiny fragments of demon stuff, small enough to avoid triggering full possession, but large enough to fundamentally alter physiology, are woven into the cochlea and auditory cortex. These fragments act as both amplifiers and translators, allowing the noise marine to hear not just physical sound waves, but also their psychic resonance in the warp. Every scream carries with it the victim's terror. Every detonation echoes with the violence of its creation. The boundary between material sound and spiritual sensation dissolves completely. The neural rewiring is perhaps even more extensive than the physical modifications. A normal human brain processes sound through specific pathways, translating mechanical vibrations into electrical signals that are then interpreted as auditory information. For a noise marine, these pathways are rerouted through their pleasure centers, their emotional regulators, and even their higher cognitive functions. Sound becomes the primary input for nearly every aspect of consciousness. The louder the sound, the more complex its harmonics, the more discordant its frequencies, the more intensely their entire nervous system responds with waves of pleasure that make normal sensations seem like faint whispers by comparison. This restructuring is not subtle or gentle. It involves biochemical treatments that dissolve existing neural connections and encourage new ones to form according to specific patterns. Sorcerous rituals guide this growth, shaping the emerging pathways with the will of Slaanesh, the chaos. God's influence ensures that the new neural architecture serves the purpose of ever-increasing sensation, creating feedback loops that make each experience of sound more intense than the last, driving the noise marine deeper into addiction with every moment. The process is agonizing, taking months or even years of continuous treatment, but those who survive emerge transformed. They are no longer merely warriors who use sonic weapons. They are living instruments, beings whose entire existence resonates with the symphony of violence. The blessing of Slaanesh completes the transformation. The Dark Prince of Pleasure takes particular interest in noise marines, seeing them as perfect expressions of the pursuit of excess through a single, focused channel. Slaanesh's blessing manifests as mutations that further enhance their auditory capabilities, while also binding them more tightly to their addiction. Some develop additional ear-like structures across their bodies, allowing them to perceive sound not just through their skulls, but through their very skin. Others find their bones hollowing and reshaping to act as resonance chambers, making their entire skeleton vibrate sympathetically with external sounds. The mutations vary wildly in their specifics, but all share a common purpose: to make sound more intense, more pleasurable, more essential to the noise marine's existence. One of the most significant aspects of their transformation is their connection to what they call the song. This is no ordinary sound, but rather a psychic phenomenon that exists outside normal time and space. According to noise marine mysticism, the song began with the Eldar's decadent civilization, the same depravity that would eventually birth Slaanesh in a psychic cataclysm. Every act of excess, every sensory indulgence, every scream of pleasure or pain contributed to this cosmic symphony that built across millennia. When Slaanesh finally tore its way into existence, the song did not end but continued, echoing backward and forward through time simultaneously, an eternal chorus of sensation that transcends mortal understanding. Noise marines believe they can hear fragments of this song, that their enhanced and corrupted senses allow them to tap into this universal music. When they fire their sonic weapons, they are not merely creating sound. They are adding their voice to a choir that includes the dying screams of the Elder Empire, the birth shriek of a chaos god, and the sensory experiences of every soul that ever served Slaanesh. This connection gives their existence a quasi-religious dimension. They are not just addicts seeking their next fix. They are worshippers participating in an eternal sacrament, musicians playing their part in a performance that shapes reality itself. The intensity of their auditory experiences defies description in terms that normal minds can comprehend. When a noise marine hears the crack of a bolt pistol, they don't just register a loud noise. They experience a cascade of sensation that floods their entire being. The sharp report of the weapon's discharge creates geometric patterns of pleasure that ripple through their consciousness. The Doppler shift as the bolt streaks through the air produces a sensation like fingers trailing along their spine. The wet crunch of the bolt penetrating armor and flesh generates waves of euphoria that make their vision blur with ecstasy. And all of this happens in fractions of a second, layers upon layers of sensation compressed into each instant. Battle becomes a form of transcendence for them. The chaos of combat provides the richest possible sensory environment. Thousands of sounds occurring simultaneously, overlapping and interfering with each other in endlessly complex patterns. Bolter fire, explosions, screaming, the hiss of power weapons, the crash of falling debris, the thunder of drop pods, the whine of aircraft, the roar of flames. Each sound is its own source of pleasure, and together, They create a symphony that can drive a noise marine into a state approaching divine rapture. They fight not just to kill, but to experience, to immerse themselves in the auditory chaos, to lose themselves in the music of death. Their own weapons amplify this experience to levels that would kill a normal human. Sonic blasters, blast masters, doom sirens, sonic shriekers. These weapons don't just damage enemies through sound, they also feed back into the noise marine wielding them, creating a closed loop of sensation. The weapon fires, producing sounds at volumes and frequencies that can liquefy internal organs. These sounds wash over the noise marine, triggering their pleasure centers. The pleasure drives them to fire again, to adjust the frequency, to find new harmonics. Each shot is both a weapon and a drug, each battle a binge that leaves them craving more. The addiction is absolute and all-consuming. A noise marine between battles exists in a state of constant withdrawal, always seeking new sources of sound to stimulate their corrupted senses. They will fire their weapons at nothing, just to hear the noise. They will torture prisoners for hours, finding exquisite pleasure in the subtle variations of screams. Some are known to stand for days near active plasma reactors, or in the exhaust plumes of spacecraft, bathing in industrial roar that would deafen a normal person in seconds. Others force their battle brothers to continually fire weapons near them, or they create bizarre musical instruments from the bodies of the dead, instruments that produce sounds no human was meant to hear. This dependency shapes every aspect of their identity. Their loyalty to Slaanesh, their role in their warband, their relationships with other Chaos Space Marines. Everything is filtered through their need for auditory stimulation. They are not cruel because they enjoy causing suffering in any normal sense. They are cruel because screams are the finest music, and they need that music more than they need anything else. They don't fight for glory or revenge or conquest, though they may claim these motivations. They fight because battle is where the best sounds are found, where the most intense auditory experiences await. And yet, despite the apparent invulnerability of their enhanced forms, despite their superhuman resilience and the protection of their corrupted power armor, despite the favor of a chaos god, their hearing can be lost. The very organs that grant them such intense pleasure are also points of terrible vulnerability. They have traded normal sensory experience for one supremely powerful but narrow channel of stimulation. Where a normal space marine has multiple senses to rely upon, a noise marine has placed all their eggs in one basket. Take away that basket, and what remains? A broken creature, lost in silence, cut off from the only source of meaning their twisted existence knows. That is the nightmare we turn to next, the catastrophe that represents every noise marine's deepest fear. The architecture of addiction. Before we can truly grasp the horror of a noise marine losing their hearing, we must delve deeper into the mechanisms of their addiction itself. This is no simple dependency that can be explained by chemical imbalances or psychological weakness. What afflicts a noise marine is addiction raised to an existential level, a fundamental rewriting of what it means to experience consciousness. Understanding this architecture of dependence will illuminate why the loss of hearing is not merely difficult for them, but represents the complete dissolution of their sense of self. The neurological basis of their addiction begins with the dopamine system, that ancient part of the brain responsible for reward and motivation. In a normal human, dopamine is released in response to many stimuli: food, sex, social bonding, achievement, and yes, pleasurable sounds. The system is balanced, with multiple pathways and regulatory mechanisms preventing any single stimulus from completely dominating consciousness. In a noise marine, this balance has been deliberately destroyed. Through biochemical treatments, surgical intervention, and warp-tainted mutations, their dopamine production and reception have been hijacked and redirected. Sound becomes the trigger for dopamine release on a scale that beggars belief. Where a normal person might experience a modest dopamine response to pleasant music, A noise marine experiences a flood of neurotransmitters so intense it would cause seizures in an unmodified brain. Their receptors, too, have been altered, made hypersensitive to this specific neurochemical signal, while being rendered nearly non-responsive to other triggers. The result is a brain that can only find satisfaction, can only feel pleasure, can only experience anything approaching positive emotion through auditory input. Everything else, sight, touch, smell, taste, fades into meaninglessness, mere shadows that barely register against the overwhelming intensity of sound. But the addiction goes deeper than neurochemistry. The very structure of their consciousness has been reshaped around sound. Cognitive psychologists speak of how addiction can dominate thought patterns, creating obsessive loops where the addicted person's mind constantly returns to their substance of choice. For a noise marine, this cognitive capture is total. They don't merely think about sound frequently, they think in sound. Their memories are stored as auditory experiences. Their plans for the future revolve around anticipated acoustic environments. Their sense of self-identity is constructed from the sounds they have heard and the sounds they hope to hear. This creates a phenomenon that might be called auditory solipsism. For these corrupted warriors, sound becomes the only truly real thing in the universe. Visual input is processed, but not truly experienced. They see their enemies, but what matters is the sound those enemies will make when they die. They navigate terrain, but only the acoustic properties of that terrain, how it echoes, dampens, or resonates, register as important. Other people exist only as potential sources of sound. A prisoner has value only for the screams they might produce. An enemy is interesting only for the noise their destruction will generate. Even their own bodies are primarily valued as instruments for creating or receiving sound. The social psychology of their addiction further compounds the isolation. Among the Emperor's children and other Slaaneshi warbands, there exists a hierarchy based on sensory experience and excess. Those who have achieved greater heights of sensation, who have pushed themselves further into the realms of extreme experience, command respect and authority. For noise marines, this translates into a competitive culture of auditory one-upmanship. They constantly compare their sonic experiences, boasting about the volume levels they've endured, the exotic frequencies they've heard, the perfect symphonies of death they've orchestrated. This social dynamic reinforces their addiction, making it not just a personal compulsion, but a measure of worth within their twisted community. The physical dependency is equally profound. Their augmented auditory systems require constant stimulation to maintain their heightened state. Without regular exposure to intense sound, the Xenos organs begin to atrophy. The neural pathways start to prune themselves. The demon essence fragments grow quiescent. This creates a feedback loop where silence is not just psychologically distressing, but physically painful. A noise marine denied sound for even a few hours begins to experience withdrawal symptoms that would seem absurd if they weren't so deadly serious. The sensation of insects crawling through their ear canals, phantom sounds that aren't really there, crushing headaches centered behind their eyes, and a gnawing emptiness in their chest that grows with each silent minute. These withdrawal symptoms pale in comparison to what happens during extended periods without adequate stimulation, but even brief exposure to insufficient sound levels creates distress. A noise marine in a quiet environment becomes agitated, unable to focus, prone to violent outbursts. They will create sound by any means available, smashing objects, firing weapons, hurting people, just to alleviate the discomfort. This makes them paradoxically more dangerous in quiet environments than in loud ones. Give them the roar of battle they crave, and they fight with savage enthusiasm, but also with a kind of satisfaction. Deny them sound, and they become desperate, unpredictable, willing to do anything to end the silence. The spiritual dimension of their addiction ties into their worship of Slaanesh. The Dark Prince represents the pursuit of excess in all forms. But for noise marines, that excess has been channeled into a single, laser-focused pursuit. They serve Slaanesh not through the broad hedonism of many of the Dark Prince's followers, but through absolute dedication to one specific form of sensation. This narrow focus pleases Slaanesh in a particular way. The Chaos God appreciates both variety and intensity, and noise marines provide intensity taken to its ultimate extreme. In return, Slaanesh grants them visions, allows them to hear fragments of the song, gives them mutations that further enhance their chosen obsession. This creates a religious fervor around their addiction, transforming it from mere dependency into sacred duty. When they participate in what they call the song, they believe they are literally joining their voices with the cosmic chorus that sustains Slaanesh itself. Every scream they produce, every sonic weapon they fire, every moment of auditory pleasure they experience, adds to this eternal symphony. In their warped theology, to stop hearing, to fall silent, is not just personal disaster, it is a form of spiritual death, a severing from their God, a failure of their most fundamental duty. The loss of hearing represents not just the loss of pleasure, but the loss of meaning, purpose, and connection to the divine. Their addiction also manifests in increasingly bizarre behaviors as they seek ever more intense stimulation. Some noise marines develop obsessive rituals around sound, needing to hear specific frequencies in specific sequences before they can function. Others become fixated on particular types of sounds. One might seek only the screams of children, finding some quality in those high-pitched wails that drives them to rapture, while another might obsess over the grinding of metal on metal, collecting examples of this sound from different materials and contexts. These obsessions can become so intense that the noise marine will abandon tactical objectives to pursue their specific auditory fixation, sometimes to the frustration of their commanders. The tolerance effect, universal to all addictions, operates with particular cruelty in noise marines. What once provided intense pleasure gradually becomes merely satisfying, then barely adequate, then wholly insufficient. The noise marine must constantly seek louder, more complex, more discordant sounds to achieve the same level of pleasure they once got from simpler stimuli. This leads to an arms race of sensation seeking that has no theoretical upper limit. Some ancient noise marines have been so desensitized that ordinary battle no longer provides any satisfaction at all. They must orchestrate elaborate massacres, coordinate the destruction of entire cities, or even venture into realms where reality itself breaks down, just to experience a flicker of the pleasure they once found in simple combat. This escalation has a terminal trajectory. As their need grows, as their tolerance increases, they eventually reach a point where reality itself cannot provide sufficient stimulation. No sound in the material universe is loud enough, complex enough, perfect enough to satisfy their corrupted desires. At this point, some noise marines undergo final transformations, becoming demon princes or being consumed entirely by their addiction, dissolving into pure sensation within the warp. Others continue their futile quest, knowing it is hopeless but unable to stop, trapped in an addiction that can never be fully satisfied but can never be abandoned. Understanding this architecture of addiction illuminates why the loss of hearing is so catastrophic. It's not that they miss sound, as a normal person might miss music or conversation. It's that sound is the entirety of their existence, the only channel through which they can experience anything resembling life, consciousness, or meaning. To take away their hearing is to take away everything. It's to leave them alive but hollow, conscious but empty, existing in a void that their corrupted minds cannot process or escape. They become living ghosts, trapped in bodies that refuse to die, while experiencing nothing but the screaming absence where their entire world used to be. As we proceed to examine the actual experience of losing hearing, keep this foundation in mind. Remember, that we are not discussing someone who has lost one sense among many. We are discussing someone whose entire being has been restructured around that one sense, who has sacrificed everything else for the sake of auditory experience, who has been promised eternal pleasure through sound and has invested their very soul in that promise. When that promise is broken, when the sound stops, what remains is not a person with a disability. What remains is a broken machine still running, a program executing without its input, a consciousness trapped in a prison of silence. It was never designed to survive. The first silence. The moment a noise marine realizes they can no longer hear is a singularity of horror that defies conventional description. It is not a gradual fading, not a slow dimming of sound into quietness. For most who suffer this fate, it comes suddenly, a catastrophic failure of their augmented auditory systems that transforms their existence from one extreme to its opposite in the space of a heartbeat. The transition from a world of overwhelming, ecstatic sound to absolute crushing silence happens faster than conscious thought can process, leaving the afflicted noise marine in a state of shock so profound it temporarily paralyzes even their superhuman nervous system. The causes of such sudden deafness are varied, each presenting its own tactical and medical challenges. The most common scenario occurs during battle, when the very environment that noise marines seek and thrive in becomes the source of their destruction. Sonic weapons, by their nature, operate at volumes and frequencies that push the boundaries of what physical matter can endure. While noise marines have been augmented to withstand and even revel in these extremes, there are limits to what even chaos-enhanced flesh can tolerate. An enemy deploying countersonic weaponry, devices specifically tuned to generate frequencies that shatter the delicate xenos organs grafted into noise marine skulls, can inflict catastrophic damage in moments. The organs rupture, the nerve bundles fuse, the empiric resonators crack, and in an instant, the channel through which they experience reality slams shut. Anti-personnel weapons designed to target hearing, flashbangs, sonic grenades, specialized munitions, can have devastating effects on noise marines despite their enhanced resilience. Where such weapons might temporarily deafen a normal human, leaving them disoriented but functional, the same weapons can cause permanent damage to the hypersensitive auditory systems of a noise marine. Their augmentations, designed to amplify and intensify sound, become liability. A weapon that produces a sudden sharp spike in pressure or frequency doesn't merely damage their hearing, it overloads their entire sensory system, burning out neural pathways, shattering the carefully cultivated structures that allow them to experience sound as pleasure. The very enhancements that make them so effective also make them uniquely vulnerable to this specific form of attack. Psychic assaults represent another significant cause of sudden deafness among noise marines. Psykers who understand the nature of Slaneshi corruption can target the neural pathways through which sound is processed, severing the connections between physical hearing and conscious experience. Such attacks don't necessarily damage the physical structures of the ear or the augmented organs. Instead, they cut the link between sensation and perception, leaving the noise marine with a functioning auditory system that no longer connects to their awareness. In some ways, this is even more cruel than physical deafness, as the sounds still register somewhere in their nervous system, creating a maddening sense that they should be hearing something but cannot access it, like a word on the tip of the tongue stretched into eternal frustration. Warp anomalies and the chaotic nature of chaos itself also contribute to sudden hearing loss. The Emperor's children often operate in environments where reality is thin, where the warp bleeds through into the material world. These regions of instability can cause unpredictable mutations and changes to their augmented biology. A noise marine who enters a warp rift might emerge with their auditory organs transmuted into something else entirely, perhaps into decorative crystalline structures that no longer function, or into flowers of living flesh that serve no purpose beyond aesthetic horror. The warp gives, and the warp takes away, and its gifts and curses follow no logic that mortal minds can comprehend. There are also cases of gradual hearing loss, accelerating suddenly into total deafness. The augmentations that grant noise marines their extraordinary hearing are not stable. The Xeno's organs reject their host's body, requiring constant immunosuppressive treatments. The demon essence fragments hunger for more power, slowly consuming the surrounding tissue. The neural rewiring creates scar tissue that accumulates over decades or centuries. A noise marine might experience slowly degrading hearing for years, compensating through increasingly desperate measures, until one day the system reaches critical failure and collapses all at once. These cases are particularly tragic, as the afflicted noise marine often sees the end coming but cannot stop it, watching helplessly as their precious hearing diminishes day by day until it finally vanishes completely. The immediate physical response to sudden deafness is violent and involuntary. The body, accustomed to constant sensory input through the auditory channel, reacts to its absence with the same severity it would to sudden oxygen deprivation. The noise marine's enhanced physiology enters a state of shock. Their hearts, both primary and secondary, race to dangerous speeds as stress hormones flood their bloodstream. Their breathing becomes rapid and shallow, despite the Astartes' normal superhuman control over their respiratory system. Muscle tremors ripple through their body as their nervous system misfires, trying desperately to interpret sensory data that is simply no longer there. In the most severe cases, the shock can trigger a temporary catatonia, where the noise marine simply stops moving, frozen in whatever position they occupied when their hearing failed, their enhanced metabolism sustaining them in this vegetative state, while their mind tries to process the impossible absence. The psychological impact arrives only seconds after the physical response, but those seconds stretch subjectively into eternities of confusion. The noise. Marines' first conscious thought, upon realizing they can no longer hear, is almost always denial. This cannot be happening. Their augmentations are perfect, blessed by Slayanesh, beyond the reach of mere damage. They try to hear, straining with an effort that would be comical if it weren't so desperate, as if hearing were a muscle that could be flexed harder. When this fails, when the silence persists despite their efforts, the denial gives way to panic. This panic is not the simple fear that a normal person might experience upon losing a sense. It is existential terror, the feeling of their entire world dissolving into nothingness. Imagine being accustomed to experiencing reality in full, vivid color, and then suddenly finding yourself in absolute darkness. Not blindness, but the complete absence of visual qualia, an inability to even remember what seeing was like. Now multiply that horror, because for a noise marine, hearing was not one sense among many, but the foundation of their entire conscious experience. The silence that engulfs them is not merely the absence of sound. It is the absence of feeling, of pleasure, of connection to their God, of meaning itself. They are suddenly, incomprehensibly alone in a way that their corrupted minds were never designed to handle. Their first instinct is to create sound, to do anything that might restore what has been lost. They fire their weapons, but of course they hear nothing. The recoil registers through their power armor. They can see the muzzle flash. They know intellectually that the weapon must be producing sound, but they perceive nothing. This disconnect between knowledge and experience creates a cognitive dissonance so severe it can temporarily fracture their sanity. They scream, but cannot hear their own voices. They smash their helmets against walls, desperate for any sensation, any confirmation that the world still exists, outside the prison of silence that has engulfed them. Some claw at their own heads, trying to physically reach the damaged organs and somehow force them to work again, inflicting horrific injuries on themselves in their desperation. The emotional cascade that follows is devastating. After denial and panic comes a grief so profound it rivals the loss of a loved one. Except what they have lost is not a person, but their own ability to experience existence as they know it. They mourn not just for their hearing, but for every sound they will never experience again. Battle brothers who have witnessed this moment describe it as heartbreaking, despite their own corruption, seeing a fellow warrior reduced to a keening, broken thing, making sounds they cannot themselves hear, sounds that express anguish beyond words. Rage follows grief, a towering fury directed at whoever or whatever caused this affliction. If an enemy is responsible, and still, within reach, the newly deafened noise marine often attacks with suicidal abandon, no longer caring for tactics or survival, wanting only to destroy the thing that has destroyed them. If no clear target presents itself, the rage turns inward or randomly outward, making the afflicted noise marine incredibly dangerous to everyone nearby, friend and foe alike. They are a wounded animal in the body of a super soldier, lashing out at a universe that has suddenly become incomprehensible and hostile. Some experience a strange, brief moment of clarity in the midst of this chaos. Cut off from the addiction that has defined them for decades or centuries, their minds momentarily freed from the constant craving for auditory stimulation, they remember what they were before their corruption. The memories come flooding back, their time as loyalist space marines, their original purpose of protecting humanity, the oaths they swore before Slanesh twisted them into what they became. These moments of clarity are often described by observers as the most disturbing part of the immediate aftermath, as the noise marine's behavior shifts from animalistic rage to something approaching genuine horror at what they have become. They see themselves clearly for the first time in ages, and what they see appalls them. But these moments pass quickly, the old neural pathways reasserting themselves, and the noise marine returns to their primary focus, the desperate need to somehow restore what has been lost. The tactical situation in which this loss occurs dramatically affects the immediate aftermath. A noise marine who loses their hearing in the midst of battle, surrounded by enemies, often continues fighting through sheer muscle memory and training. Their superhuman reflexes and combat experience allow them to respond to visual cues even while their mind reels in shock. But their effectiveness is catastrophically reduced. They cannot hear warnings from their squad. They cannot detect enemies approaching from outside their visual range. Most critically, they lose the feedback loop that made combat pleasurable, transforming the experience from euphoric release into mechanical emptiness. Some fight on anyway, going through the motions, while others simply stop, standing immobile even as enemies close in, too overwhelmed by their loss to care about survival. If the loss occurs in a relatively safe environment, between battles, in a chaos warship or fortress, the immediate danger is often to the noise marine's battle brothers rather than from external enemies. The newly deafened warrior becomes unpredictable, violent, and unreasonable. They may attack anyone who approaches, seeing threats everywhere. They may demand that others help restore their hearing, becoming enraged when such help is not immediately forthcoming. They may fixate on sources of vibration that they can still feel through their power armor, desperate for any sensation that resembles their lost sense, following these sensations without regard for where they lead. Managing a newly deafened noise marine requires multiple warriors to restrain them, and casualties among would-be helpers are not uncommon. The immediate aftermath is also when the first withdrawal symptoms begin to manifest. Within minutes of losing their hearing, the noise marine's altered neurochemistry starts to rebel against the absence of its primary stimulant. The dopamine flood that they were accustomed to experiencing nearly constantly abruptly ceases. Their reward pathways, having been rewired to respond only to sound, fire desperately and randomly, trying to find any stimulus that might trigger the familiar pleasure response. This creates a syndrome similar to severe drug withdrawal, but compressed and intensified beyond normal human experience. They experience intense dysphoria, a profound sense that something is terribly wrong that goes beyond mere unhappiness into a kind of existential wrongness, a feeling that reality itself has become hostile and alien. Physical symptoms accompany the psychological distress. Despite their augmented physiology, despite the pain-dulling effects of their armor and the resilience granted by their chaos mutations, they experience sensations their nervous system identifies as agony, crushing pressure in their skull, a sensation of ice water being poured directly onto their brain, phantom sounds that seem real but cannot be verified, auditory hallucinations that taunt them with what they have lost. Their vision becomes unreliable, as the neural pathways that once carried sound now fire randomly, creating overlapping sensory experiences. Some describe seeing sounds as visual patterns, synesthetic experiences that should not be possible now that their hearing is gone, but persist anyway, reminders of what they can no longer experience properly. For those noise marines who have been deeply integrated into the mystical aspects of their condition, who have truly believed themselves to be participants in the Ur-song, the loss of hearing carries an additional spiritual dimension of horror. They feel themselves being severed from something greater than themselves, cut off from the eternal chorus, cast out from the presence of Slanesh. This is not metaphor or imagination. The warp is real. The connection to their God was real, and now it is gone. They feel abandoned, cast into outer darkness, punished for some unknown transgression. The spiritual anguish compounds the physical and psychological suffering, creating a trinity of torment that assaults every aspect of their being simultaneously. The duration of this immediate crisis varies. For some, the acute phase of shock and panic lasts only minutes before giving way to a different kind of suffering, the longer-term horror of adaptation and withdrawal. For others, especially those whose hearing loss occurs during battle or in immediately life-threatening situations, the crisis phase is interrupted by death before it can fully develop. And for an unfortunate few, the immediate crisis never truly ends, their minds unable to process the loss, leaving them locked in a perpetual state of denial and panic that can last for days or weeks, until madness or the mercies of their battle brothers end their suffering. In every case, the first silence marks a dividing line in the Noise Marine's existence. There is the before, when they were what they understood themselves to be, warriors of excess, devotees of sensation, participants in an eternal symphony. And there is the after, when they are something else, something broken, something whose identity and purpose have been ripped away, leaving only the shell of what they were, screaming silently into a void that cannot hear them and does not care. Withdrawal and degradation. Once the immediate shock of hearing loss begins to subside, the Noise Marine enters a prolonged period of withdrawal and degradation that can last for weeks, months, or in rare cases, even years. This phase represents the slow dissolution of their corrupted identity, a process of psychological and spiritual decay that occurs even as their physical body, rendered nearly immortal by Astartes enhancements and chaos mutations, stubbornly refuses to die. What follows is perhaps even more horrifying than the initial loss, because it is not sudden catastrophe, but extended suffering, a gradual wearing away of everything that made them who they were. The withdrawal syndrome that plagues a deafened Noise Marine surpasses anything experienced by conventional addicts. Normal addiction involves dependency on substances or behaviors that trigger the brain's reward centers. Withdrawal occurs when those triggers are removed, leaving the reward system starved and misfiring. But a Noise Marine's addiction is not to an external substance. It is to a sensory experience that their entire nervous system has been reconstructed to require. Taking away their hearing is not like denying a drug addict their drug. It is more akin to removing oxygen from the atmosphere. They can survive its absence, but only in a state of constant suffocation, their entire being crying out for something that is no longer available. The neurochemical chaos that follows hearing loss creates symptoms that would kill a normal human. Their dopamine system having been hijacked and redirected to respond exclusively to auditory input, continues to demand the neurotransmitter floods it has become dependent upon. But without sound to trigger those releases, the system begins to malfunction catastrophically. The noise marine experiences dysphoria so intense it manifests as physical pain. They describe it, when they can be communicated with at all, as a gnawing emptiness in their chest. A sensation like their hearts are trying to pump blood through vessels that have collapsed into nothingness. An ache that radiates from their core out to their extremities and back, again in waves that never quite cease. Their neural pathways, having been dedicated almost entirely to processing auditory information, begin to atrophy without use. The brain, that most adaptive of organs, starts to reconfigure itself, but not in any healthy or functional way. The rewiring that occurs during withdrawal is haphazard, random, creating connections that serve no purpose, that generate noise in the system without producing meaningful outputs. This manifests as cognitive impairment that grows worse with each passing day. Memory becomes unreliable. Logical reasoning breaks down. Even simple tasks, maintaining their weapons, following basic commands, navigating familiar spaces, become difficult or impossible. They are losing not just their hearing, but their minds, degrading from engineered superhumans into something barely functional. Hallucinations are nearly universal during extended withdrawal. The brain, desperate for the sensory input it has been conditioned to require, begins generating its own. Auditory hallucinations would seem the obvious manifestation, but ironically, these are rare. The damage to their hearing has often affected not just the physical organs, but the neural pathways that would process phantom sounds. Instead, their hallucinations take other forms. Visual distortions where they see sounds as patterns of light and shadow, synesthetic experiences that should not be possible. Tactile hallucinations where they feel sounds as pressure against their skin, as heat or cold, as pain or pleasure. These false sensations torment them, offering the promise of experience only to reveal themselves as empty illusions, cruel mockeries of what they have lost. The psychological degradation proceeds along multiple trajectories simultaneously. Depression of a depth and severity that dwarfs clinical major depressive disorder sets in within days. The noise marine has lost the only source of pleasure they can experience, leaving them in a world that is entirely grey, entirely flat, entirely devoid of positive sensation. Every moment is suffering, not the intense anguish of acute pain, but the low, grinding misery of complete emotional emptiness. Nothing matters. Nothing has value. Nothing brings satisfaction or joy, or even mild contentment. They continue to exist only because their engineered bodies will not release them into death, trapped in a life that has become entirely without meaning or purpose. Anxiety accompanies the depression, a constant state of agitation and dread without specific focus. They fear everything and nothing. The world has become incomprehensible and hostile. Without their primary sense, they cannot predict danger, cannot gauge their environment, cannot feel secure, even in familiar spaces. This anxiety manifests as hypervigilance to their remaining senses, their eyes darting constantly, their remaining sensory organs working overtime to compensate for what has been lost. But this compensation is inadequate, and they know it, creating a feedback loop where anxiety about their vulnerability makes them more vigilant, which makes them more aware of how vulnerable they truly are, which increases their anxiety further. The rage that characterized the immediate aftermath of hearing loss does not dissipate, but transforms into something chronic and corrosive. It becomes a background radiation of fury that colors every interaction, every thought, every moment. They are angry at the universe for allowing this to happen, angry at their enemies for causing it, angry at their battle brothers for failing to prevent it, angry at Slanesh for not protecting them, angry at themselves for being weak enough to suffer this loss. This rage has no productive outlet. It simply burns, consuming whatever psychological resources they have left, making every other symptom worse, preventing any possibility of adaptation, or acceptance. Identity dissolution represents perhaps the most profound psychological consequence of extended hearing loss. A noise. Marines' sense of self has been constructed entirely around their auditory experiences and their pursuit of ever greater sonic sensation. Take away that foundation, and the identity built upon it begins to collapse. They no longer know who they are. The purposes that once drove them, adding their voice to the song, serving Slanesh through sensory excess, finding the perfect sound, these purposes are now impossible. Without purpose, without identity, they become hollowed-out shells, going through the motions of existence without any real engagement or investment in their own lives. Some attempt to construct new identities to replace what has been lost, but these efforts almost always fail. They might try to embrace rage as their new defining characteristic, becoming warriors of pure violence rather than sensation seekers. But the rage is hollow, unsatisfying, a poor substitute for what they have lost. They might attempt to find meaning in loyalty to their warband or their chaos lord, but this loyalty rings false when it is motivated only by the absence of alternatives. They might even attempt to find pleasure in other senses, pain, temperature, pressure, but their nervous system has been so thoroughly rewired that these sensations barely register. Everything becomes grey static, noise without meaning, experience without impact. The physical degradation that accompanies psychological breakdown is remarkable even by the standards of chaos mutation. The augmented organs that granted them their enhanced hearing, now useless, begin to necrotize. The Xenos tissues, maintained through a delicate balance of biochemistry and warp energy, start to decay. This decay is not clean or quick. The dead tissue remains in place, slowly corrupting, releasing toxins into the surrounding flesh. Even the remarkable healing abilities of a space marine struggle to contain this slow rot. Infections take hold in the ear canals and spread into the skull. Tumors develop from the mutating tissues. Some noise marines experience the organs actually growing, expanding outward in grotesque parodies of their original function, becoming cancerous masses that push through the skull and distort the head into monstrous shapes. The demonic fragments bound within their auditory system react unpredictably to the loss of function. Some fade away, their connection to material reality severed by the damage to the organs they inhabited. Others become more active, no longer controlled by the regular flow of sensory input, thrashing against their bindings like caged animals. This activity can cause phenomena ranging from the merely uncomfortable to the actively dangerous. The noise marine might hear phantom voices, not hallucinations, but actual demonic whispers leaking from the fragments in their head. They might experience localized reality distortions, where the space around their skull becomes unstable, objects nearby moving in ways that defy physics. In extreme cases, the demon fragments might break free entirely, either possessing the noise marine or manifesting as lesser entities that must be destroyed before they cause further havoc. Slayanesh's blessing, which once enhanced their hearing, becomes a curse in its absence. The mutations granted by the Dark Prince do not simply reverse or fade when they are no longer useful. Instead, they often accelerate, taking new and twisted forms. A noise marine who once had extra ear-like structures across their body might find these organs transforming into gaping wounds that weep blood and pus but cannot heal. Those whose bones were reshaped into resonance chambers might discover those bones becoming brittle and prone to fracture, as if their structure has been optimized for a function they can no longer perform and has become weak in all other respects. The mutations that were blessings become stigmata of their loss, visible reminders of what they once were and can no longer be. Behavioral changes during extended withdrawal are dramatic and disturbing. The noise marine may become completely non-responsive, sitting or standing in one place for hours or days, ignoring all stimuli, lost in an internal world of suffering that has no external expression. Alternatively, they may become manic, moving constantly, unable to rest, engaging in repetitive behaviors, that have no obvious purpose. Pacing the same route endlessly, manipulating objects without goal, striking surfaces in rhythmic patterns that might be attempts to create or experience sound, but serve no functional end. These behaviors can shift rapidly, the noise marine cycling between catatonia and mania without warning or apparent trigger. Their relationship with their equipment and weapons undergoes disturbing transformations. Sonic weapons, once the source of their greatest pleasure, become objects of obsession or revulsion. Some deafened noise marines cannot bear to part with their sonic blasters and doom sirens, carrying them everywhere, cleaning and maintaining them compulsively, treating them with a tenderness that seems almost religious. These weapons represent their lost paradise, tangible links to a time when existence had meaning. Other noise marines violently destroy their sonic equipment, smashing or discarding it in fits of rage, unable to tolerate these reminders of what they have lost. Both reactions stem from the same root, an inability to process the loss and move beyond it. Social dynamics within their warband become increasingly problematic. Other noise marines, still possessed of their hearing, find their deaf battle brother's presence disturbing. He is a walking reminder of their own vulnerability, an example of what might happen to them. This creates a tendency toward isolation, or even ostracism. The deafened noise marine is excluded from gatherings, given less desirable duties, treated as a lesser being. This social rejection compounds their psychological suffering, adding loneliness to their already overwhelming burden of symptoms. Some warbands have been known to simply abandon their deafened members, leaving them behind when they depart from a planet or station, discarding them like broken equipment. Communication with a deafened noise marine during this phase becomes extremely difficult. They can see and sometimes read lips, but their cognitive impairment often makes processing visual information challenging. Written words become incomprehensible symbols. Sign language goes unlearned, or is learned only with tremendous effort. The barrier between them and the rest of their warband grows increasingly impermeable, isolating them further. This isolation is particularly cruel because it prevents them from receiving any support or sympathy that others might offer. They suffer alone, unable to express their anguish in ways that others can understand, unable to receive comfort, even if it were offered. The question of whether recovery or adaptation is possible haunts this phase of withdrawal. In theory, the noise marine's brain should eventually adjust to the absence of auditory input, developing new neural pathways, learning to derive satisfaction from other sources. But the rewiring that made them noise marines in the first place was so profound, so extensive, that such adaptation seems nearly impossible. Their dopamine system does not spontaneously repair itself. Their identity does not reconstruct on its own. Without intervention, medical, sorcerous, or divine, most deafened noise marines remain locked in a state of permanent withdrawal, existing but not living, conscious but not truly aware, suffering but unable to escape or end their suffering. The duration of this phase varies enormously. Some deafened noise marines degrade rapidly, reaching complete psychological collapse within weeks. Others maintain a degree of function for months or even years, though their quality of life is questionable at best. The factors that determine this variation are poorly understood, perhaps the depth of their original corruption, perhaps the strength of their will, perhaps simply random chance. But in all cases, the trajectory is downward. Without their hearing, without the sensation that defined them, they cannot maintain equilibrium. They can only decay, slowly or quickly, completely or partially, but always in the same direction, toward a final dissolution of self that may come as death, as complete madness, or as transformation into something no longer recognizable as what they once were. Throughout this phase, the deafened noise marine exists in a liminal state between life and death, between sanity and madness, between their former identity and complete dissolution. They are neither fully one thing nor another, trapped in a transition that has no natural endpoint. This liminal existence, is perhaps the cruelest aspect of their fate. If they could simply die, their suffering would end. If they could adapt, they might find some new form of existence bearable. But they do neither. They persist in their agony, degrading but not dying, suffering but not adapting, lost in a wilderness of silence from which there is no clear path forward and no acceptable path back. The twisted solutions. When a noise marine loses their hearing, those rare few who retain enough coherence to seek help or whose warbands value them enough to intervene have limited options for potential restoration. None of these options are simple, painless, or guaranteed to succeed. Each comes with its own risks, costs, and consequences, often leaving the noise marine changed in ways that may be worse than deafness itself. But for someone experiencing the withdrawal and degradation described previously, any chance, no matter how slim, no matter how costly, seems worth pursuing. Desperate warriors turn to desperate solutions, and in the galaxy of the 41st millennium, desperation leads to places darker than most can imagine. The most sought-after practitioner of biological restoration among the traitor legions is Fabius Bile, the primogenitor, the spider, the clone lord. As the former chief apothecary of the Emperor's children, Bile possesses unmatched knowledge of the Legion's modifications and the specific augmentations that create noise marines. His expertise in genetic manipulation, organ grafting, and neural restructuring makes him theoretically capable of repairing or replacing damaged auditory systems. Deafened noise marines who can locate him, no easy task given his nomadic existence, often attempt to bargain for his services, offering whatever they possess in hopes of restoration. Bile's solutions to hearing loss vary wildly depending on his current research interests, available resources, and mood. In some cases, he might attempt straightforward organ replacement, harvesting fresh xenos tissues from captured specimens or from his extensive stores of biological materials, then surgically implanting them into the damaged skull. These operations, performed without anesthesia because Bile finds the subject's pain responses useful diagnostic information, have mixed success rates. The new organs might integrate properly, might reject catastrophically, or might mutate into something entirely unexpected. Bile considers all outcomes equally interesting from a research perspective, though obviously only one outcome satisfies his patient. More often, Bile uses the deafened noise marine as an opportunity for experimentation rather than simple repair. He might graft entirely new sensory organs onto them, structures taken from aliens whose biology no Imperial scholar has documented, whose function even Bile himself does not fully understand. He might attempt to create artificial hearing through technological means, implanting arcane devices that translate vibrations into electrical signals sent directly into the brain. He might even try to restore hearing through controlled mutation, exposing the noise marine to carefully modulated warp energies intended to trigger regeneration of damaged tissues. These experimental procedures almost always cause additional suffering and often fail to restore hearing even when they don't kill the subject outright. The price Bile demands for his services reflects his twisted values. He rarely cares about material wealth or promises of future loyalty. Instead, he requests payment in the form of genetic samples, experimental subjects, or opportunities to pursue his current projects without interference. A deafened noise marine might regain their hearing but lose their freedom, becoming one of Bile's permanent test subjects, undergoing endless procedures as the primogenitor explores various hypotheses about sensory augmentation. They might be required to deliver him captives, baseline humans, space marines, xenos, anyone whose genetic material interests him. They might find themselves bound to serve his greater plans, conscripted into his armies of new men, or assigned to guard his laboratories against the many enemies his work has earned him. Even when Bile successfully restores hearing, the results are rarely identical to what was lost. The new auditory system might be more sensitive than before, but also more vulnerable, requiring constant maintenance and adjustment. It might introduce unwanted side effects, synesthesia, cognitive changes, physical mutations. The noise marine might regain their ability to hear, but find that sound no longer produces the same pleasure it once did, the neural pathways having been rerouted during the restoration process. They might hear new frequencies invisible to their former senses, sounds that carry information they cannot process, or that drive them to distraction. Bile makes no guarantees and accepts no returns. Once he has been paid, once the procedure is complete, the noise marine must live with the results, whatever they may be. Other apothecaries across the traitor legions occasionally attempt their own restoration efforts, though few possess Bile's skill or resources. These attempts often follow more conventional medical approaches, trying to repair damaged tissues through surgical intervention, attempting to stimulate regeneration through chemical treatments, removing and replacing the most badly damaged components of the auditory system. Success rates are low. The modifications that create noise marines are not simple prosthetics or straightforward augmentations. They involve Xeno's biology, warp-tainted mutations, and neural rewiring so extensive that fully understanding the original work, let alone repairing it, exceeds the capabilities of most chaos apothecaries. Many attempts at restoration result in the patient's death, either from surgical complications or from infection introduced during the procedure. Even more result in partial restoration at best, some hearing recovered but at dramatically reduced sensitivity, or hearing restored in only narrow frequency ranges, or sound perceived but no longer producing the euphoric response that makes it valuable. Sorcerous solutions represent another avenue, though one fraught with its own dangers. The Thousand Sons, particularly those among the Legion who still retain some connection to their original knowledge and are willing to aid Slaaneshi warbands, might be persuaded to attempt magical restoration. Their approach typically involves attempting to rebuild the damaged neural pathways through warp sorcery, using psychic energy to stimulate growth and reorganization of brain tissue. These procedures require the sorcerer to essentially reach into the noise marine's mind and manually reconstruct the cognitive architecture that allows them to process sound. The process is invasive, agonizing, and carries significant risk of catastrophic failure. When sorcerous restoration succeeds, it often succeeds too well. The rebuilt neural pathways may be more extensive than the originals, creating hearing that extends into frequencies that exist only in the warp. The noise marine might begin to hear things that should not be heard, the whispers of demons, the screaming of souls in torment, the background radiation of psychic energy that permeates the galaxy. These sounds can be maddening, impossible to ignore or filter out. Some restored noise marines actually beg to be deafened again, finding the new reality of their hearing worse than the silence they escaped. Others embrace these new perceptions, becoming strange hybrids of noise marine and psyker, able to hear and manipulate sounds that exist on multiple layers of reality simultaneously. The most direct solution, and perhaps the most terrible, involves making pacts with demons. Slaaneshi daemons, particularly those associated with sensation and pleasure, sometimes offer to restore a deafened noise marine's hearing in exchange for service. The demon might offer to possess specific portions of the noise marine's body, inhabiting the damaged auditory system and using its own essence to replace the lost function. The noise marine would hear again, but through demonic senses, experiencing sound filtered through an entity whose perception of reality is fundamentally alien. Alternatively, the demon might offer to grant mutations that bypass normal hearing entirely, creating entirely new sensory organs that can process vibrations and translate them into something the noise marine's mind can interpret. These demonic pacts always come with strings attached. The demon might demand regular sacrifices, victims chosen specifically for the quality of their screams, offerings that must be made at specific intervals, or the bargain is void and the hearing lost again. The daemon might retain partial control over the noise marine's body, able to influence their actions or thoughts, effectively making them a puppet. The daemon might gradually expand its presence, using the original pact as a foothold to achieve fuller possession, slowly consuming the Noise Marine's identity until only the demon remains. Even when none of these worst-case scenarios occur, the Noise Marine is forever bound to the demon, their souls linked, their fates intertwined. Destroying the demon means losing the hearing again. Failing to satisfy the demon's demands means the same. The bargain can never be renegotiated or escaped. Some deafened Noise Marines attempt to restore their hearing through pure devotion to Slaanesh, throwing themselves into worship and acts of excess, in hopes that the Dark Prince will take notice and grant them healing as a reward. They orchestrate elaborate massacres in Slaanesh's name, each designed to produce maximum suffering in specific victims. They create art, if such a term can be applied to the twisted creations of chaos, that expresses their anguish and their devotion. They seek out and corrupt innocents, turning them to Slaanesh's service, hoping that successful recruitment might earn divine favor. These efforts occasionally succeed, though whether Slaanesh truly takes notice of individual petitioners, or whether the restoration occurs through sheer chance, is impossible to determine. When Slaanesh does intervene directly, the results are characteristically excessive and unpredictable. The restored hearing might be far beyond what the Noise Marine originally possessed, so sensitive that normal conversation registers as painfully loud, requiring them to constantly dampen their senses just to function. The restoration might come with additional mutations. Their ears might multiply across their body. They might develop entirely new organs of unknown function. Their skull might reshape into bizarre configurations. Slaanesh's gifts are never simple or straightforward. They always push the recipient toward new extremes, new forms of excess, new ways of experiencing sensation that often prove as burdensome as they are beneficial. Technology-based solutions exist, but are rarely successful for Noise Marines specifically. The Mechanicum, particularly its darker elements who have aligned with chaos, can create crude prosthetic hearing devices. These mechanical augmentations can detect vibrations and translate them into neural signals, theoretically allowing the user to perceive sound. For normal individuals rendered deaf by injury, such devices can restore functional hearing. But for Noise Marines, whose entire sensory system has been rebuilt around specific types of augmentation, mechanical prosthetics rarely integrate properly. The signals they produce don't match the patterns the Noise Marine's brain expects to receive. The pleasure response doesn't trigger. The Noise Marine can technically hear, but the experience is flat, empty, devoid of the satisfaction they crave. It's like being able to see only in shades of grey after experiencing full colour. Better than blindness, perhaps, but a pale shadow of what was lost. Some desperate Noise Marines pursue multiple restoration attempts sequentially, trying one approach after another, when each fails to fully restore what they have lost. These individuals become medical horrors, their bodies bearing the scars of repeated surgery, their nervous systems layered with multiple failed augmentation attempts, their skulls deformed by various modifications. Each failed attempt often leaves them worse off than before, more scarred, more damaged, less able to tolerate the next procedure. Eventually, even Fabius Bile might refuse to operate on them, deeming their bodies too compromised to work with, leaving them with no options remaining except to accept their deafness or seek the final solution of a merciful death. The question of whether restoration is worth the cost haunts many deafened Noise Marines during lucid moments. The procedures are agonizing, expensive, dangerous, and far from guaranteed to succeed. The prices demanded often involve moral compromises that would horrify their pre-corrupted selves, though given how far they have already fallen, few retain enough moral sense to care. The restored hearing, when achieved, might not match their memories of what they lost, creating new forms of disappointment and frustration. And yet, the alternative, accepting permanent deafness, living in eternal withdrawal, existing without the one source of pleasure their nervous system can recognize, seems equally unbearable. They are trapped between two forms of suffering, forced to choose between the known horror of silence and the unknown horrors of the restoration attempt. Not all deafened noise marines pursue restoration. Some, broken by their loss, simply give up. They might deliberately seek death in battle, fighting recklessly until an enemy grants them release. They might take their own lives, though the conditioning and mental architecture of a space marine makes suicide difficult even for those who wish it. They might exist in a kind of living stasis, neither pursuing restoration nor fully accepting their condition, trapped in limbo indefinitely. These noise marines become cautionary examples within their warbands, reminders of the fragility that lies beneath their augmented exteriors, object lessons in why restoration should be sought or why it should be avoided, depending on which lesson the observer wishes to draw. For those who do successfully restore their hearing through any of these methods, life rarely returns to how it was before. They have been changed by the experience of loss, by the withdrawal and degradation, by whatever procedure granted them restoration. They may be more cautious in battle, more aware of their vulnerability, less likely to take the risks that defined their previous existence. Or they may become more reckless, having learned that existence without hearing is worse than death, and therefore fearing death less. They may find that their restored hearing, while functional, never quite produces the same intensity of pleasure they remember, leaving them perpetually dissatisfied, chasing a sensation that can no longer be fully recaptured. They may find that the restoration has changed them in other ways, altered their personality, damaged their memory, introduced new compulsions or obsessions. The journey from loss through attempted restoration and potentially to recovered hearing represents a gauntlet of suffering that would break lesser beings. That many noise marines survive it at all speaks to their superhuman resilience, though whether such survival is blessing or curse remains debatable. They emerge from the process transformed, marked by their experience in ways both visible and invisible, carrying scars that will never fully heal, even if their hearing has been restored. They have looked into the abyss of silence, and it has looked back into them, leaving something of itself behind, even after they escape its grasp. Living in silence. For those noise marines who cannot or will not pursue restoration, who must learn to exist permanently in the silence that has engulfed them, life becomes an exercise in endurance without hope of reprieve. These warriors, once defined entirely by their relationship to sound, must somehow construct a new existence from the ruins of the old, finding ways to function in a sensory environment that their corrupted nervous system was never designed to tolerate. The question is not whether they can adapt. The answer is clearly that full adaptation is impossible, but rather how they survive their inability to adapt, what strategies they employ to endure the unendurable, and what they ultimately become in the process. The social position of a permanently deafened noise marine within their warband becomes precarious at best. In the highly competitive, sensation-obsessed culture of Slaaneshi warbands, especially among the Emperor's children, status and respect are earned through ever greater displays of excess and the achievement of more intense experiences. A noise marine who can no longer participate in the auditory aspects of this competition, who cannot revel in the sounds of battle or add their sonic weapon's voice to the warband's attacks, loses much of what made them valuable. They are relegated to support roles, given tasks that don't require functional hearing, treated as second-class members of a community that once welcomed them as equals. This demotion stings particularly because it's not based on any failure of skill or courage. A deafened noise marine retains all their combat training, their superhuman physical capabilities, their tactical knowledge. They are still space marines, still among the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. But within the twisted value system of their warband, these qualities matter less than sensory capability. They have become damaged goods, flawed merchandise, less desirable than their hearing-capable brothers. The ostracism they experience is not necessarily malicious, though it can be, but rather reflects the simple reality that they can no longer fully participate in what their warband values most. Some warbands show a degree of consideration for their deafened members, recognizing that loss of hearing through battle injury is a risk all noise marines face and could happen to any of them. These warbands might create special roles for the deafened, positions that don't require hearing but still allow them to contribute meaningfully. Perhaps they become close combat specialists, where the visceral feedback of melee fighting provides some satisfaction even without sound. Perhaps they become laborers or artificers, maintaining equipment and structures. Perhaps they become prison guards or slave overseers, roles that don't require auditory input but benefit from having a space marine's strength and endurance. These accommodations allow the deafened noise marine to retain some dignity and purpose, even if they can never reclaim their former status. Other warbands are less kind. They view deafness as weakness, and in the brutal social dynamics of Chaos Space Marines, weakness invites exploitation. The deafened become targets for abuse, physical, psychological, social. Their equipment might be confiscated and given to others deemed more capable of using it properly. They might be assigned the most dangerous or degrading duties, effectively being used as expendable assets. They might become objects of mockery, their disability a source of cruel amusement for warriors who have long since lost any capacity for genuine empathy. In extreme cases, they might be outright sacrificed in rituals to Slaanesh, their offering justified as giving meaning to an existence that has lost all other value. The deafened noise. Marines' attempts to find alternative sources of sensation represent perhaps their most desperate adaptation strategy. Unable to experience sound, they turn to other senses with an intensity born of absolute need. Some focus on pain, deliberately injuring themselves in hopes that the sensation might trigger something approaching the pleasure response they remember. But their nervous system has been so thoroughly rewired around sound that pain registers as mere noise, unpleasant but not satisfying, unable to fill the void left by their lost hearing. The self-injury escalates as they chase a satisfaction that never comes, leaving them increasingly scarred and damaged without achieving the release they seek. Others attempt to find satisfaction in visual stimuli, exposing themselves to lights, colors, patterns, anything that might provide sensory input intense enough to trigger their dopamine system. They might stare at flames for hours, watching the chaotic dance of combustion. They might collect artwork or create their own, trying to find in visual beauty what they once found in auditory sensation. But sight was never their primary sense, was never augmented or enhanced the way their hearing was, and it proves inadequate as a substitute. The lights and colors register as interesting perhaps, but never as pleasurable. The void remains unfilled. Some turn to extreme physical sensation, not just pain, but also temperature, pressure, and proprioceptive feedback. They might seek out environments of extreme heat or cold, pushing their enhanced bodies to the limits of what they can endure, hoping that the intense sensation might somehow satisfy their craving. They might engage in activities that produce strong G-forces or acceleration, that create intense pressure on their bodies, that push them to the boundaries of physical capacity. These experiences are more successful than visual stimuli in producing some response from their corrupted reward systems, but they still fall far short of what sound once provided. At best, they offer distraction from the void. At worst, they serve as painful reminders of what has been permanently lost. The psychological adaptations are perhaps even more important than the physical ones. Some deafened noise marines attempt to reconstruct their identity around something other than sound. They might embrace different aspects of Slaaneshi worship, pursuing perfection in combat technique, for instance, or becoming obsessed with physical beauty and grotesquerie. They might transfer their obsessive tendencies to new focuses, collecting specific types of weapons or trophies, developing elaborate rituals, fixating on particular enemies or goals. These attempts at reinvention rarely fully succeed, but they provide structure and purpose that might otherwise be absent, giving the deafened something to focus on beyond their loss. Others take the opposite approach, refusing to acknowledge their disability, insisting that they are still functionally identical to what they were before. They continue to carry sonic weapons despite being unable to appreciate them. They claim to still hear the song despite all evidence to the contrary. They describe auditory experiences that cannot possibly be real. This denial can be adaptive in its way, protecting them from the full psychological impact of their loss, but it also prevents them from making realistic adjustments to their new limitations. They put themselves and their battle brothers at risk by insisting on roles they cannot effectively perform, driven by pride or desperation, or simple inability to accept reality. Memory becomes both comfort and torment for the deafened. They can still remember what sound felt like, how certain noises produced specific sensations, the pleasure they derived from auditory experiences. These memories are often the most vivid and detailed recollections they possess, preserved with a clarity that other memories lack. They replay them obsessively, like an addict revisiting past highs, experiencing a pale echo of pleasure from the mere memory. But these mental replays also emphasize what has been lost, making the silence that much harder to bear by comparison. Each trip down memory lane is followed by the crash back into reality, the realization that those experiences can never be reclaimed. Some deafened noise marines develop a philosophical or spiritual relationship with their silence. Having been cast out from the song, cut off from Slaanesh's blessing in their one chosen form, they interpret their deafness as a kind of test or trial. Perhaps they believe that accepting the silence, learning to exist without the one thing they crave most, will demonstrate a devotion to Slaanesh that transcends mere sensory indulgence. Perhaps they see their suffering as a form of penance for unknown transgressions, a temporary punishment that will eventually be lifted if they prove worthy. Perhaps they convince themselves that silence is itself a form of sensation, a negative pleasure that can be appreciated for its own qualities once properly understood. These philosophical frameworks rarely provide genuine comfort, but serve as coping mechanisms that allow continued existence. The question of how long a deafened noise marine can survive in silence varies enormously. Some exist for only months before succumbing to madness, suicide, or the cumulative effects of their various attempted adaptations. Others persist for years or even decades, their superhuman physiology sustaining them long after any baseline human would have broken completely. The factors determining lifespan seem to be a complex mixture of the depth of their original conditioning, the circumstances of their deafness, the support or lack thereof from their warband, and perhaps simple random chance. But survival in this context does not imply anything approaching quality of life. They are not living so much as existing, consciousness continuing in the absence of any reason for it to do so. Rare cases exist of deafened noise marines who somehow achieve something approaching acceptance or peace with their condition. These exceptional individuals manage to construct new identities that don't depend on sound, new purposes that give meaning to their continued existence. They might become teachers, passing on their combat experience to younger warriors. They might become philosophers or theologians of sorts, developing new interpretations of Slaaneshi worship. They might find purpose in simple survival, treating each day endured as a victory over their condition. But these cases are vanishingly rare, exceptions that prove the rule that deafness is an essentially incompatible state for a being whose entire existence has been built around auditory sensation. Many deafened noise marines eventually seek death, whether through reckless behavior in combat or more direct means. For some, this represents surrender, an acknowledgement that existence without hearing is not worth continuing. For others, it's a pragmatic calculation. They have extracted what value they can from their remaining time and see no point in prolonging an experience that brings only suffering. For still others, it's a final act of devotion to Slaanesh, offering their death as a sacrifice to the god who blessed and then seemingly abandoned them. Regardless of motivation, death often comes as a relief, not just to the deafened noise marine, but to their battle brothers, who no longer must witness the uncomfortable reminder of what might happen to them. Those who survive long-term often become strange figures within their warbands, living relics of a fate worse than death, cautionary tales, objects of simultaneous pity and contempt. They occupy a liminal space, neither truly alive nor properly dead, neither fully part of the warband nor entirely cast out from it. They serve whatever purpose their commanders assign, perform whatever duties they're capable of, and endure the silence that has become the totality of their existence. They are monuments to the cruelty of their God, examples of how even devotion and service offer no protection against loss, reminders that in the service of chaos there is no promise of reward. Only the certainty of suffering informs both expected and unexpected. The permanent silence that engulfs a deafened noise marine is not peaceful or restful. It is oppressive, active in its absence, a presence rather than a lack. They feel it pressing against them constantly, feel the weight of sounds that aren't there, experience the echo of echoes that never occur. Their minds, wired to process constant auditory input, continue trying to find it, generating false signals, creating phantom sensations, anything to fill the void. This mental noise, not real sound, but the desperate hallucinations of a sensory system that cannot accept its own impairment, becomes its own form of torture. They are haunted by the ghosts of sounds, tormented by memories of sensation, trapped in a silence that screams at them with voices only they can hear. If there is any mercy in their fate, it is only that. Eventually, time and suffering erode even the most resilient consciousness, the deafened noise. Marines' grip on sanity gradually loosens, their sense of self slowly dissolves, and they drift into a state that resembles dementia more than active suffering. The withdrawal never truly ends, but their capacity to experience it diminishes. They become less aware, less present, less affected by their condition, simply because less of them remains to be affected. This degradation is mercy only in the most technical sense. They suffer less because they exist less, feel less pain because they feel less of anything. They fade slowly toward a merciful oblivion that their superhuman physiology prevents them from fully reaching, trapped in twilight forever. Philosophical and spiritual implications. The loss of hearing for a noise marine raises profound questions about identity, suffering, divinity, and the nature of existence itself. These are not merely academic concerns, but lived realities for the afflicted, whose deafness forces them to confront philosophical and spiritual dilemmas that would challenge even the most sophisticated theologian. Understanding these deeper implications helps illuminate why deafness is so catastrophic for noise marines. It's not just a physical disability, but an existential crisis that threatens everything they believe about themselves, their purpose, and their relationship with the divine. The question of identity is perhaps the most fundamental. What makes someone who they are? Is identity rooted in the physical body, in the consciousness that inhabits it, in the memories that constitute a personal history, in the relationships with others, or in the purposes and goals that motivate behavior? For most people, identity is some complex combination of all these elements. But for a noise marine, identity has been deliberately simplified, refined, and focused onto a single point: their relationship with sound. Everything else has been discarded or subordinated. Take away that central pillar, and what remains? The ship of Theseus paradox takes on dark new meaning in this context. If you replace every plank in a ship, is it still the same ship? If you remove the one defining characteristic of a being, replace nothing, and leave the rest intact, is it still the same being? The deafened noise. Marine has all the same memories, same physical form, same genetic structure, same training and experience as before. Only one element has changed: And yet, that one element was so fundamental that its absence calls into question whether they are still the same person at all. Are they the same noise marine, now disabled? Or are they something else entirely, wearing a noise marine's skin, haunted by a noise marine's memories, but lacking the essential quality that made them who they were? This identity crisis extends to their relationship with their warband and their role within Chaos Space Marine society. The Noise Marine's position was defined by their capabilities and their pursuit of specific forms of excess. Without those capabilities, without the ability to pursue those particular experiences, their social role disappears. They become undefined, unpurposed, existing without clear function. This loss of role compounds the loss of self, leaving them adrift not only in their own consciousness, but also in their social context. They are orphans from their own identity, strangers in their own lives, dispossessed of the one thing that gave them meaning and belonging. The spiritual implications are equally devastating. Noise Marines see themselves as participants in something transcendent, the song that echoes across time and space, binding all devotees of Slaanesh into a cosmic choir. Their sonic weapons are not merely tools, but instruments of worship, each shot a prayer, each scream they produce or provoke an offering to their god. When they lose their hearing, when they can no longer perceive the song or meaningfully contribute to it, they experience what might be called spiritual death. They are cut off from their god, not through rejection or apostasy, but through simple biological failure. Their faith remains. They still worship Slaanesh, still believe in the Dark Prince's power, but they can no longer participate in that worship in the ways that defined their devotion. This raises uncomfortable theological questions about the nature of Slaanesh's favor. The Chaos Gods are powerful beyond mortal comprehension, capable of reshaping reality with a thought. If Slaanesh truly valued their Noise Marines, why does the god not protect them from deafness or restore their hearing when it is lost? Several possible answers exist, none of them comforting. Perhaps Slaanesh doesn't care. The Dark Prince is vast and capricious, and individual mortals, even enhanced super soldiers, might be beneath notice. Perhaps Slaanesh actively finds their suffering amusing. The god of excess might derive pleasure from the exquisite irony of a sensation seeker deprived of all sensation. Perhaps Slaanesh views deafness as a test, a trial that separates the truly devoted from the merely indulgent. Or perhaps the answer is more disturbing still. Slaanesh can and does restore hearing, but only for some, chosen by criteria mortals cannot comprehend, meaning that those who remain deaf have been deliberately passed over, marked as unworthy of intervention. The concept of divine cruelty becomes unavoidable in these contemplations. If Slaanesh created Noise Marines, rewired their nervous systems to be dependent on sound, encouraged them to build their entire existence around auditory sensation, and then allows or causes that sensation to be taken away, is this not cruelty? Is this not creating beings specifically designed to suffer in a particular way? The counter-argument, from a Slaaneshi theological perspective, would be that the suffering itself is a form of experience, that the intensity of the loss is proportional to the intensity of what was lost, and that such extreme suffering is valuable precisely because it is extreme. Sensation, not happiness, is what Slaanesh values. Pain, properly understood, is just another form of sensation, potentially as valuable as pleasure. From this perspective, the deafened Noise Marine's suffering is not punishment, but gift, a new form of experience as intense as the sonic ecstasy they once knew. But this theological rationalization provides cold comfort at best. The deafened Noise Marine experiences their loss not as gift, but as deprivation, not as a new form of sensation, but as the absence of sensation, not as a divine blessing, but as abandonment. The intellectual argument that suffering is valuable does not make the suffering itself any less painful or any more bearable. They can understand the theology that might justify their fate without accepting it, can recognize the argument without being consoled by it. Faith and experience war within them. They believe Slaanesh is their god and should be worshipped, but they cannot shake the feeling that they have been betrayed by that god. The question of whether deafness can be overcome through willpower alone carries both practical and philosophical weight. The power of the mind to influence the body is real, particularly among Chaos Space Marines, whose biology is already partially influenced by belief and conviction. Some deafened noise Marines have convinced themselves that they can hear through sheer determination, that their faith in Slaanesh can substitute for functioning auditory organs. Occasionally, this conviction seems to produce results. They report hearing sounds, responding to auditory cues, even finding pleasure in what they claim to experience. But whether this represents genuine restoration through psychosomatic means or merely elaborate self-delusion is impossible to determine from outside their own consciousness. And in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, the distinction between psychosomatic healing and delusion, between faith-based miracle and madness, is often vanishingly thin. The deafened noise Marine's existence raises broader questions about the nature of suffering and whether it can have meaning. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust, argued that humans can endure almost any suffering if they can find meaning in it, but that suffering without meaning is unbearable. The deafened noise Marine faces exactly this dilemma. If their suffering serves some purpose, if it's a test, a trial, a temporary condition before restoration, a sacrifice that benefits others, then perhaps it can be endured. But if it's random, meaningless, a simple consequence of bad luck with no greater significance, then it becomes almost impossible to bear. They search desperately for meaning in their condition, trying to construct narratives that make their suffering purposeful, because purposeless suffering is a horror their minds cannot process. The irony of their situation is not lost on those few deafened noise Marines capable of reflection. They sought sensation, pursued it with absolute dedication, sacrificed everything else in their lives to its pursuit. They believed that greater sensation meant greater existence, that the intensity of experience was what gave life value. And now they have discovered the inverse, that the absence of sensation is not merely neutral but actively terrible, that the void left by missing experience is itself a form of torture. They learned that the pursuit of pleasure through one narrow channel made them catastrophically vulnerable, that by putting all their existential eggs in one basket, they ensured that losing that basket would destroy them. The lesson is clear but useless, learned too late, purchased at a price that cannot be refunded. Their fate also serves as a meditation on the nature of addiction and whether it can ever truly be overcome. Addiction, at its core, is the reshaping of the reward system around a single stimulus. Recovery typically involves retraining that system, teaching it to find satisfaction in other stimuli, rebuilding the ability to experience pleasure from sources other than the substance or behavior one was addicted to. But for noise Marines, the rewiring was so extensive, so fundamental, that true recovery seems impossible. They cannot retrain their dopamine system because it has been permanently altered at a neurological level. They cannot find satisfaction in other stimuli because those pathways have been severed or repurposed. They are trapped in their addiction even when the substance of that addiction is no longer available. They experience all the suffering of withdrawal without the possibility of eventual recovery. Addiction frozen in its most painful moment, extended indefinitely. The question of whether existence under these conditions can be justified becomes starkly practical. Is it better to be alive and suffering, or dead and at peace? For a noise Marine who retains their hearing, this question never arises. Existence is justified by the pleasures it contains, by the sensations yet to be experienced, by the continued participation in the song. But for the deafened, every moment is suffering with no relief in sight. They continue to exist, only because their enhanced biology makes death difficult to achieve, not because life offers anything worth continuing for. At what point does existence become so devoid of positive content that non-existence becomes preferable? At what point does the mercy of death outweigh the instinct for survival? These are not abstract questions for the deafened noise marine. They are immediate, practical concerns that must be confronted every moment of every day. Slaanesh's perspective on all of this remains, appropriately for a chaos god, incomprehensible and contradictory. The Dark Prince might view the deafened noise marines with amusement, finding entertainment in their suffering, enjoying the exquisite cruelty of creating beings who crave sensation and then depriving them of it. Or Slaanesh might be genuinely indifferent, focused on other concerns, barely aware that these particular servants are suffering. Or the god might feel something approaching sympathy, though filtered through a consciousness so alien that even its sympathy would be unrecognizable as such to mortal minds. Perhaps Slaanesh values the deafened specifically because their suffering is so intense, seeing them as more perfect servants, precisely because they endure such exquisite torment in the god's name. The truth, if truth even exists in matters involving chaos gods, is probably some shifting combination of all these possibilities and others besides, varying from moment to moment, according to the whims of a being who embodies excess and contradiction. From an imperial perspective, the fate of deafened noise marines might seem like justice. Heretics and traitors receiving punishment commensurate with their sins, suffering inflicted by the very corruption they embraced. The Sisters of Battle might see divine providence in it, the Emperor's vengeance expressed through the natural consequences of chaos worship. The Inquisition might view it as useful intelligence, revealing a weakness that could potentially be exploited in combat. But even the most hardened servants of the Imperium, if they truly understood what deafness means for a noise marine, might feel a twinge of discomfort at the sheer scale of the suffering involved. It is almost too perfect a punishment, too precisely calibrated to cause maximum distress, too cruel even for the cruel galaxy of the 41st millennium. The ultimate question that the deafened noise marine cannot escape is, what remains? After identity has been stripped away, after purpose has been lost, after connection to the divine has been severed, after all hope of restoration or adaptation has been exhausted, what remains? The answer, cold and final, is consciousness. Just consciousness, continuing because it has no choice, experiencing nothing but suffering, unable to end or escape or find meaning in its continuation. They have become philosophical zombies in reverse, not creatures that lack consciousness despite appearing to have it, but creatures that possess consciousness despite having lost everything that might make consciousness valuable. They exist, they suffer, and they endure, monuments to the peculiar cruelty of their god, and testaments to the infinite varieties of horror that the galaxy can produce. The ultimate irony. As we reach the conclusion of this exploration into one of the 41st millennium's most particular brands of horror, it's worth reflecting on the profound ironies embedded in the fate of deafened noise marines. These warriors dedicated their existence to the pursuit of sensation, particularly auditory sensation, building their entire identity around the experience of sound raised to levels of intensity that would destroy normal minds. They believed that in doing so, they were following the truest path of excess, achieving heights of experience that represented the pinnacle of what Slaanesh offered. They thought themselves blessed, chosen, superior to those who settled for mere baseline sensation or who split their attention across multiple forms of pleasure. In their obsessive focus, in their absolute dedication, they believed they had found the ultimate expression of devotion to the Dark Prince of pleasure. And yet, this absolute dedication, this narrow focus, this investment of everything they were into a single channel of experience has created the exact conditions for their complete destruction. By rebuilding themselves entirely around sound, They eliminated all redundancy, all backup systems, all alternative pathways to meaning and pleasure. A normal space marine who loses their hearing suffers a disability, certainly, but retains many other capacities and sources of satisfaction. They can still find purpose in combat, still take pride in their service, still connect with their battle brothers through other means. They have lost one sense among several, not the foundation of their entire existence. But the noise marine, in their pursuit of ultimate sensation, has created ultimate vulnerability. They have become a magnificent edifice built on a single pillar, and when that pillar crumbles, nothing can prevent total collapse. The irony extends to their relationship with Slaanesh. They serve the god of excess with absolute devotion, sacrificing everything, loyalty to the emperor, bonds with their unmodified battle brothers, their own humanity, to pursue the sensory experiences Slaanesh represented. They believed this service would be rewarded with eternal pleasure, with ever-increasing intensity of sensation, with a kind of immortality defined by unending ecstasy. Instead, they discover that Slaanesh is not a beneficent god who rewards faithful service, but a chaos god whose very nature includes cruelty, capriciousness, and contradiction. The suffering of the deafened noise marine is, in its own twisted way, as much a gift from Slaanesh as the enhanced hearing that preceded it. Both are forms of extreme sensation. Both are excessive in their intensity. Both fit perfectly within the Dark Prince's domain. The noise marine sought excess and received it, but excess in suffering rather than pleasure, excess in loss rather than gain. There is also a cruel poetry in how their weapon becomes their weakness. Sonic weaponry, designed to inflict maximum suffering on enemies through overwhelming, destructive sound, creates the exact conditions that can destroy the noise marine's hearing. They surround themselves with volumes and frequencies at the edge of what matter can withstand, immerse themselves daily in acoustic environments that should be lethal, and are surprised when eventually those extremes damage the very organs that allow them to appreciate sound. It's reminiscent of an artist who stares directly at the sun to capture its perfect light, only to blind themselves and lose the ability to create or appreciate any art at all. The tool of their expression becomes the instrument of their destruction. The fate of deafened noise marines also serves as a broader commentary on the nature of corruption and the ultimate hollowness of chaos. The promises chaos makes are real. Power beyond mortal limits, sensations impossible for unmodified humans, liberation from the constraints of imperial law and morality. But the costs are equally real and ultimately unbearable. Every gift comes with strings attached. Every blessing carries the seed of curse. Every step down the path of corruption leads further from anything resembling genuine satisfaction or peace. The noise marine embodies this truth in particularly stark form. They received exactly what they were promised: hearing beyond human limits, pleasure from sound beyond mortal capacity, a direct connection to their God. But that gift has made them dependent, vulnerable, and ultimately broken when it is taken away. They are objectively worse off than if they had never received the blessing at all, left with nothing but memories of what they once had and the knowledge that it can never be reclaimed. Their story also illuminates the fundamental emptiness at the heart of Slaaneshi worship. The pursuit of ever greater sensation seems attractive in theory. Who wouldn't want more intense pleasure, more profound experiences, more excitement and stimulation? But this pursuit is infinite by definition. There is no endpoint, no moment of satisfaction, no achievement that allows one to rest content. Each new height of sensation requires a greater height next time. Tolerance increases, and the hedonic treadmill accelerates forever. The only possible endpoints are death, the transformation into something so alien that human concepts like pleasure no longer apply, or the complete collapse we see in deafened noise marines. The inability to continue the pursuit, combined with the inability to find satisfaction anywhere else. All of Slaanesch's followers face this trajectory eventually. The Noise Marines simply have the misfortune of reaching the breaking point in a particularly dramatic and horrible way. But perhaps the most profound irony is that silence, which was their most dreaded fate, might have been their salvation if encountered earlier. Before their transformation into Noise Marines, when they were still relatively unmodified Space Marines, a period of enforced silence might have been unpleasant, but ultimately character-building. It might have taught patience, introspection, the value of stillness. It might have prevented their corruption, might have kept them from embarking on the path that led to their current state. Silence before transformation could have been redemptive, but silence after transformation is only destructive, because by then they have burned the bridges that might have allowed them to find meaning in quietness. They have destroyed their own capacity for adaptation, rebuilt themselves into something that can only function in one narrow set of conditions, and thereby ensured their own ultimate defeat. What can we, as observers, learn from their fate? Perhaps simply this: that specialization carried to extremes creates vulnerability, that becoming too dependent on any single source of satisfaction, whether sensory, chemical, emotional, or spiritual, sets the stage for catastrophic failure when that source is removed. The Noise Marines are extreme examples, their transformations far beyond anything a normal person would experience. But the principle applies more broadly. Any addiction, any obsession, any rebuilding of one's entire life around a single focus creates similar risks at smaller scales. The more we invest in one thing, the more devastating its loss becomes. The more we allow one aspect of existence to define us, the more hollow we become when that aspect is taken away. There is also a warning here about the promises of transcendence through sensation. Our modern world offers endless opportunities for sensory escalation. Louder music, brighter screens, more intense flavors, stronger drugs, more extreme experiences. The pursuit of these intensities can seem attractive, can feel like progress towards some ultimate experience that will finally satisfy. But the Noise Marine's fate suggests that this path leads nowhere good. There is no satisfaction at the end of the escalation, only the need for more escalation. And the more dependent we become on these extreme sensations, the more baseline experience seems inadequate, the more we lose the capacity to find joy in simple things. The Noise Marines followed this path to its logical conclusion and found only addiction, vulnerability, and eventual destruction. Their example suggests that perhaps the path was flawed from the start, that the pursuit of ever greater sensation is not liberation, but a trap that becomes more constrictive the further down one travels. The horror of their situation lies not in any single moment, but in its permanence. Many horrors are acute, intense suffering that is brief, pain that ends, loss that can eventually be recovered from. But the deafened Noise Marine's horror has no end point. There is no recovery, no adaptation, no eventual acceptance. There is only continuation, moment after moment, day after day, year after year, experiencing the same emptiness, the same craving that cannot be satisfied, the same withdrawal that never resolves. They are trapped in the worst moment of loss, extended indefinitely, turned into a way of life that cannot be escaped except through death. This permanence, this lack of any possibility for improvement, is perhaps the most crushing aspect of their fate. And yet, they persist. Despite everything, despite the suffering and the emptiness and the knowledge that it will never get better, they continue to exist. Their superhuman physiology sustains them. Their chaos-granted mutations keep them alive. Their consciousness persists whether they wish it to or not. They are monuments to endurance without purpose, survival without hope, existence stripped of everything that makes existence valuable. They serve as warnings etched in still living flesh, warnings about the dangers of obsession, the costs of serving chaos, the price of sensation taken to extremes, and the peculiar horror of being trapped in the consequences of one's choices, with no possibility of escape or redemption. The question of whether any meaning can be salvaged from their suffering remains unresolved, because it is ultimately unanswerable. From one perspective, their fate is utterly meaningless. Random injury leading to consequences that serve no purpose, teach no lesson that wasn't already known, and benefit no one. From another perspective, their suffering is exactly as meaningful as any other experience, neither more nor less, simply another sensation in a universe where sensation is the only currency Slaanesh recognizes. And from a third perspective, perhaps their suffering is intensely meaningful, precisely because it illuminates so clearly the nature of the trap they fell into, serving as object lessons for anyone tempted by similar promises. The meaning, like so much else in Warhammer 40,000, depends entirely on perspective. And perspective is something the deafened noise marines have lost the capacity to maintain. As we conclude this examination of what it's like when a noise marine loses their hearing, we're left with an appreciation for the multi-layered horror of their situation. It's not just physical disability, though that aspect is real and significant. It's not just psychological suffering, though the mental anguish they experience is profound. It's not just spiritual crisis, though their separation from Slaanesh and the Ursong cuts to their very sense of purpose and identity. It's all of these things simultaneously, compounding and reinforcing each other, creating a totality of suffering that approaches the absolute. They are trapped in a nightmare that has no end, pursuing a satisfaction that can no longer be achieved, craving an experience that is permanently beyond reach, existing without living, conscious without being truly aware, surviving without any reason to survive. They are, in short, examples of how, in the grim darkness of the far future, there truly are fates worse than death, and the servants of chaos are often the architects of their own most terrible punishments. If you found this exploration into the auditory horror of Warhammer 40,000 enlightening, please consider subscribing to Stories of Hammer and hitting that like button. There are countless more tales of tragedy and terror lurking in the darkness of the 41st millennium, and together we can shed light on them all. Thanks for watching, and may your own hearing remain intact, because as we've seen today, silence can be its own form of damnation.